Well, good day, folks. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, coming to you live right in the podcast layer. Great little place. Thrilled to be here. Life is good. Now, I'm going to complain about something that is just a fact in California. As we watch our elections, and frankly, we had our election day in California last week, 1 week ago. It didn't close till a few hours after this, but essentially it's been a week. And we only know the answers in some of the races. That's because California has 30 days to vote, 30 days to count, and all kinds of flaws in their system. So I'm talking about California's universal mail-in balloting system. If we look around the world, almost every democracy, I get we're a republic, but every government that is similar to us, kind of Western-style democracy, I get we're better because we're a republic and we protect the rights of the minority. All of them, almost without exception, require voter ID, yet California doesn't. All of them seem to be able to, if they have huge problems, like let's look at the logistics of a country like Brazil, where a lot of those places are very remote. You know, you're in a small town in the middle of the Amazon jungle. In other words, it would be hard because they don't have the roads, they don't have the infrastructure for people to travel as easily. And yet, a place like Brazil knows their election results in on the outside 2 days, usually a day. If we go to a country like India, a lot of smart people, a lot of capable people come from India, but it's still fair to say that with their billion people, that they're a third world country because their poverty rate is exceedingly high. Their average income is exceedingly high. 640 million of those 1 billion people in India voted in the last election. And yet, in a day, again, a country that's third world that doesn't have the roads in a lot of places, they have dirt roads for a lot of the country. They have a tremendous population that speaks multiple languages. And yet India could do it. Now, how is it that Gavin's less competent and is running something that's less competent than that? I don't think it's an accident. It's not that Gavin's incompetent. It's that he cares about the acquisition of power and drawing attention to himself. So we are run by a man who is the ultimate narcissist, you know, with the good hair Gavin. And they've set up a system where it's hard to, there's not much transparency. It's hard to figure out what really is happening. So I'm going to go over some problems of the universal mail-in balloting system. And I want to point out that we're the only state that has it. Heck, even super liberal places like France, you know, they're run currently by socialists. They have voter ID, Gavin. Did you know that? He's in the wine industry. You'd think he'd know what's happening in France. And in a country that, you know, France is a little smaller than California, and it only has approximately 20 million people. But they know in a day what happened. I'm contending to you that they set up this difficult system by design. So there's no transparency, so that the machine has the advantage. The insider has the advantage. And the insider right now is the corrupt one-party rule of the Democrats, led by Lord Gavin and his band of merry men. Maybe band of drunken Democrats would be the right way to put it, because there seems to be no common sense in Sacramento. So the first thing I thought of was, well, everybody gets a mail-in ballot. And okay, if you want everybody to vote, that doesn't seem so terrible, except the voter rolls aren't cleaned. That's kind of a problem. How is it that I have friends that live in California that showed me ballots, and I because I know them personally, they got ballots for, in one case, parents that had been gone for more than 10 years. In other words, they'd been deceased for 10 years. And if that person was inclined to cheat, They could have just voted for their parent. And because it was their parent, they knew what their signature looked like. And the signature verification in California is an absolute joke. Well, that's a real problem. So everybody gets a ballot. In theory, that's okay, except that means that it's really, really easy. It's very, very vulnerable. But don't worry. Politicians don't lie. Criminals don't lie. And they would never do it for power. So the system's 100% fine, right? One of the other big problems, as I'm going through and thinking about this, is the results take forever, 30 days. You know, I gave examples of third world countries that are able and have their act together, yet we're the 5th largest economy, which Lord Gavin loves to brag about, but we're embarrassingly incompetent at counting ballots. So if it takes forever, then people don't have confidence. A lot of friends of mine are absolutely convinced that the reason it takes forever is because they need to know what spread they have to cover so that they can come up with the number of votes they need. In other words, if we got 30 days, it's 30 days to figure out what you need to make sure that the election always goes your way. And we've seen that several times. We'll get to Spencer Pratt, and there's some things that are highly questionable about what happened. We'll go over that. No ID when you register. So if I was dishonest, I could very easily go to Shirley Weber's website, that is the Secretary of State of California, and I could sign up as many times as I chose to for voter registration. And they say, well, yeah, but there's these 4 boxes and you can use these types of ID. And what you do is just click the box or not click the box. Say, I don't have that type of ID. Well, I don't have that type. By the time you get to the 4th one, if you say, well, I don't have that one, they let you register anyway with no other oversight. That's a problem. Well, it's not a problem if nobody cheats, nobody lies, and politicians are honest. And criminals have decided that, well, you know, the government, it might slap their wrist. And I know that is what criminals are afraid of.
Yeah.
So they would not do it. You know, it's a lot easier to buy ballots. Let's say you needed 100 votes. Small election, you needed 100 votes. You could go to the homeless and buy votes because there's nothing to stop it. You could sit there right there and go, here's your ballot. I'll give you, let's say, $50 a ballot. Or you can run a TV ad to try to get those 100 votes. It's cheaper to buy 100 votes from the homeless or from college students who are not that interested anyway. They're like, $100, I can go party. Now, not everybody would take it, but even on UCLA's campus, there have been documented incidences of people buying ballots. There have been multiple incidences of homeless being paid for ballots. Now, none of it's large scale because we've not caught proof of it's easy to cheat. Though I keep ruining my whole premise, remember, politicians and criminals never lie. And that seems to be how California views a lot of things. That's why we have so much fraud in California. Because, no, it couldn't be fraud. DMV automatically signs you up in California. It's the voter bill. No, motor voter bill. So let's say you're and if you don't unclick the box that automatically registers you, you're registered to vote. What if you just don't have citizenship? Again, but you were eligible for a driver's license. You're here legally. Permanent resident, green card, visa. You're eligible for a DMV license. You're automatically signed up. And frankly, a lot of those people, English is their second language, so it might be a struggle. They might not realize that they're automatically registered to vote. So here's another vulnerability of the system where it'd be really easy. Really easy. What if a cartel moved in a bunch of people, because cartels absolutely human traffic. And they could guarantee a politician a certain number of votes for a price. Be as simple as they all got driver's licenses, and then because they were cartel members or frankly controlled by the cartel, the cartel would say, I need all your ballots. And then it'd be legal for one person to take all potential. I don't have proof of this one, but if I could figure it out pretty easily, I guarantee you criminals could find a way to manipulate the system. Our vote, universal mail-in balloting, it totally favors those that have a ballot harvesting system like the unions, like the NGOs that tend to help the homeless, or they might work through healthcare, where they're responsible for getting illegal free healthcare, that taxpayers pay for. In exchange, they might want to vote. Well, if we don't clean our rolls, but once there's a problem, but before the idea of we got to clean our rolls, if they get into the system, they still get to vote in this election as long as the very pitiful signature verification allows that ballot to be counted. In other words, if it could be a completely fraudulent ballot, person that's in no way eligible, but if they get in the system, they get to vote in that election. Because you know what every registered voter does? First thing, they check the signature. Again, it has to have 3 points in common with a normal signature. So let's say that I make a big loop at the top of my E, and the R looks sort of like this, and one other letter in my name looks a certain way, and the rest of the signature doesn't look similar. That would be enough for it to then be counted good. So I make the signature verification.
Okay. Yeah.
Next thing, once the signature verification, they take that envelope and they separate it from the ballot. So somebody who's a criminal or somebody that's not eligible in any way, as soon as it makes it through that step, it's in the system. There's nothing to be done because we've got a system that just doesn't work. It's too easy to manipulate.
And isn't that system, I heard that they allow people to register to vote using Costco cards, gym cards, not even...
Sure.
Yeah.
You could do it that way, but you don't even actually have to have something as good as your Gold's Gym Club card.
Yeah.
You can say, I don't have any ID, and they will still let you register to vote. And once you're in the system, now the signatures just have to marginally kind of sort of match. So if you signed in cursive and you learned basic cursive, I'd say that most people's E's would look relatively similar. Well, if it had 3 elements in common, that'd be enough for it to pass.
Wow. Yeah, I think, California isn't counting votes anymore. They're curating outcomes, you could say, right? When
I don't know that it's an election. It's like, yes, people vote, but if we always seem to have the same outcome, which is one that outside of a very few number of areas, every election that truly matters seems to always magically there's enough Democrat votes to overcome anything. Yet California is somewhere around 40% conservative. You'd think we'd have some wins instead of none.
I think they're just proving that this is just miracles happening in the ballot box. All these miracles and
it's because the Democrats are so religious and they're constantly praying for miracles. Oh, wait, they don't believe in God, they believe in government. They're praying for government to fix their problems, and that's why these coincidences keep happening.
Yep.
People who have moved, and I brought up this point earlier, people have moved or died. And I knew of one person personally, close personal friend. Her dad's ballot showed up 10 years after he died. Now, she hadn't received it for the previous 9 years.
Ghost voting.
Yeah, it's like ghost voting. Now, again, if she was dishonest, she could have very easily voted twice.
Wait, there's no evidence. There is no evidence.
Oh, no, I saw her ballot. There's evidence.
No. There's no evidence. No matter what you show me, that's what they say. No matter what you show the left, they scream no evidence. There's no evidence of this and that, and people getting flagged on YouTube even. Sorry, YouTube,
Really?
Don't flag us.
YouTube doesn't want the truth? I'm shocked. Almost as if YouTube has a narrative
No.
and a perspective rather than just advocating for free speech. You think YouTube would want to advocate for free speech, but what do I know?
And thank you, YouTube, by the way. Congratulations to our host here, who is approaching 20,000 subscribers here.
That is a great thing. I have more confidence in Rumble, but YouTube, hey, folks, if YouTube was the free speech platform that it could be, and this is an appeal to people in charge at YouTube, then it could be a great thing. Instead, it sometimes works and sometimes picks winners and losers. I'm not okay with that. I love the fact that Rumble simply lets somebody way on the left, somebody way on the right, and people all in the middle say whatever they want in free speech. You can't threaten people. There's a few little rules. You can't threaten murder, can't threaten violence, but short of that, you can say what you believe to say. And guess what? That's free speech. It's okay to be profoundly wrong, people on the left. I respect your right to be completely wrong.
Yeah. I just hate when they use non-arguments. They strongman you saying there's no evidence, or they just label you a conspiracy theorist. That's it.
Yeah.
And
again, I know other people that I've seen ballots where they have moved into a place. They've lived there for 3 years. I have a neighbor, lived there for 3 years now. And this last election, he got ballots from the two previous owners of the house. Now, I don't know where those people live, but they don't live at that address because my neighbor lives at that address.
Yeah, and you could vote with your ballot that you haven't gotten the mail, and then you can go to the precinct and vote. Just tell them where you live and vote again. I didn't do that, but I mean, it's so easy. Like, hey, they're not even checking the ID. They just, where do you live? You just have to give an address.
Right, and they do expect you to sign, but again, when you vote in person, you do have to sign and you have to give them an address. But if you got 3 elements in common, if you knew what that signature sort of looked like, that would take care of it. If it was a fraudulent person in the first place, for instance, they just recently found 26 people, and this is all over Benny Johnson. They found 26 people that were registered to vote in a vacant lot, and the only structure on the vacant lot was a porta potty.
What?
Now, I don't know how they got their ballots, but I assume those people, it was some scam.
Yeah.
And they voted.
I see it as kind of like becoming a DoorDash kind of service, though, of sending people to gather all the ballots. Yeah. Making it easy and easier to cheat.
Well, what we have to remember is that the Democrats have a long-standing tradition that even after death, they still vote Democrat. And so I guess California is just continuing that tradition. They talk about how forward and progressive we are in California. They've decided that they're going to extend that tolerance to the dead so that the dead can now vote in California.
It's to honor the dead, I think.
Is it to honor them? I don't see the solution as Republicans becoming the same corrupt group, though there are problems with Republicans. I see the answer is something like voter ID. That would nip a whole lot of this in the butt. They require an actual real photo ID when you register to vote. You make everybody re-register. If the voter ID ballot initiative passes in November, and folks, it needs to pass. This solves a lot of our election problems. It's still 30 days to count to figure out how many votes you need. It's kind of crazy that postmark is good for up to 7 days after. But guess what? It doesn't even have to be a postmark, because in a lot of counties in California, particularly the high population counties, they still accept them anyway. If you wrote election day, you never mailed it, you dropped it off, and you wrote election day on your ballot, they would count it even if they got it 2 weeks late in a lot of counties in California.
So do you think the executive order Trump just did is going to help? Or
I think it's going to help, but I think it was a little late.
Now, that raises a follow-up question. Do you think he's done enough, or do you think he's just waited? Some of those on the right, they kind of put out their extreme. Not really, but that because of Massey, he kind of waited for that?
I'm not sure. I liked a lot of things about Massey until he was against the SAVE Act, and then I decided that he was a traitor to our country, and I'm really glad that Thomas Massey is no longer. He is still sitting there, but he will not be the congressman in Kentucky soon.
For those of you out there, I disagree with Eric on that one. I'm actually more for him now because I realize his why. But I hate it at the time and was with you completely.
I'm generally with him until the SAVE Act.
Yeah.
And then I realized that would be like I'm for open borders. Okay. It's just that important. It is so foundational that we get voter ID that Massey's just got to go. I would be yelling at him if he was sitting across from me, Phil. I think he's totally a scumbag on this one.
I remember you at the time.
This was not okay.
Yes. Yeah, for the SAVE Act. For me, it was the Big Beautiful Bill. I understand his why. I'm for the Big Beautiful Bill, but the whole Epstein thing.
I don't feel nearly as strong about the Big Beautiful Bill. He was right on Epstein. Mm-hmm. I'll give you that, but you can't be a traitor on a foundational issue and think you should still be in office. Now, that would disqualify, in my eyes, most Democrats, but I expect a little better of Republicans. You know that Massey voted more than any other Republican with the Democrats. Now, I understand, and I heard his reasoning on a lot of them.
Yep.
And often I agreed with his reasoning until he decided that we didn't need voter ID, and I went, what is wrong with you? You're not very bright, are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, right now you're hearing your host, Eric Rollins, being triggered by Massey right now. Okay, go Team Massey. Go, not.
Well, hey, look, I'm just glad Massey is going to be out of there.
I hear you.
Look, if he had people that backed him, and he did not, he was essentially a lone wolf. A lot of his ideas and the constitutionality of him, he's right. But if you do not, this is the reality of politics, if you do not have a team to help you get things done, but instead you're just the guy that goes, nye, 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 always, how useful are you?
Oh, I just stand with Charlie Kirk when in regards to Massey. I think we needed a voice in there that kind of pushed back on the new establishment out there. But that's just me.
I generally liked him until he was what I consider to be that's kind of traitorous to America.
Amen. Okay.
Like, what is wrong with you? Again, I would literally be yelling at him if I saw him in person. And I don't think it would be, I would not exclude 4-letter words.
I've heard you with it. Yeah, I think there is an era of the machine politics, even the one party and the Republican. There's little nuances we could disagree with and okay with. But I understand he didn't vote for certain things that we were really fighting for when it came time for it. Mm-hmm. His why, I think I have a little bit of understanding.
Yes, but you can't do that all the time. And once you got to a foundational issue, I was done.
Your principles could keep principle, but you got to kind of compromise on some things without compromising.
For instance, Tom McClintock, often on constitutional grounds, has voted against things, but generally went with the party on things that mattered. I have less problem with Tom McClintock and huge problems with Thomas Massey. Anyway, getting back to, because we're going to run out of time otherwise. So fraud is easy in this system. It's easy to cheat. It's easy to lie. Voter ID and citizenship kind of are pieces that would tie it together. And if you look around the world, voter ID is required. Heck, in a lot of, we're going to be at huge quotation marks, democracies, like Russia, like Pakistan, where it's pretty corrupt governments, though California and the United States can't sit on a real high horse anymore about corruption because we got some. Even there, they expect voter ID. So third world nations are going, it only makes sense to have voter ID, and then Lord Gavin has decided he likes power more than anything, so he will lie to your face and tell you that, oh, everything's fine, even when it doesn't meet reality. We're going to get into some specifics about Spencer Pratt and why I have huge problems with what's happening in that election. We're going to go ahead and play a video that I think kind of encapsulates those problems. So I want to say thank you to Danny Love, WFF News. She put this video together. I think it's powerful. We ready to roll on that?
If you've seen...
Well, maybe we're not ready to roll on that.
Okay. Little technical
The most important thing that worries me about this current election is just before the election on May 22nd, Lord Gavin, in his great wisdom, signed a bill from the legislature to block audits from local governments and federal governments, to block local law enforcement from enforcing or checking out what they consider to be crimes that have to do with the election. So, Gavin, what you hiding?
Here are all the things that are suspect with the mayor race in LA. On May 27th, Gavin Newsom signed legislation to block a federal audit of the votes. Now, why would you need to do that if there's nothing to hide? Even though LA's population has decreased significantly since the last primary election in 2022, somehow LA is expecting 35% more votes this time around. On one of the late night ballot drops, Spencer Pratt got 0 out of the 24,000 votes. Based on the fact that Spencer Pratt had over 30% of the votes at this time, Grok says that the statistical probability that he received 0 of those 24,000 votes is 1 in a trillion. Now, the LA Times did do a story on this and admitted that yes, tens of thousands of mail-in ballots did get processed only for Mayor Karen Bass and Nithya Raman, but they chalk it up to being just a glitch. They say the system just glitched for a minute and they didn't process any ballots for Spencer Pratt, but really there were ballots for Spencer. They just didn't get processed during the glitch. Nithya Raman's numbers have all of a sudden surged, putting her in second place, and yet she didn't even win her own district. And CNN has come out to say that this is the biggest conspiracy of all time.
This is the dumbest conspiracy theory I have ever heard, because the Democratic establishment and Karen Bass wanted Spencer Pratt in the runoff. They don't want any part to do with Nithya Raman. Why is that? Because just take a look here. Okay, Mayor runoff polls, Bass versus opponent versus Pratt. Bass would have crushed Pratt by 18 points.
Sure, we believe you. The Democrats are really upset about getting Spencer Pratt out. So, what do you think? Voter fraud, or this is just the way California does it? Or is that the same thing? As always, let me know down below.
So I want to address some of those. 24,000 votes. None for Spencer Pratt in LA Times immediately makes an excuse, which you would expect because they're a hardcore left-wing rag. Doesn't make any sense. Typically what happens is whatever percentage a candidate comes in, let's say at the end of the evening on a Tuesday, because our elections end on a Tuesday in California. When they call it, we have a percentage. And then the mail-in ballots that get counted later, frankly, I think they should be getting counted as they come in, but as they come in later, they're typically fairly close to whatever that reported number is. So Spencer Pratt was at approximately 30%. So you would expect that about 30% of those votes that came in would also be for him. It might be a little different, but not hugely different. And we've got multiple elections for that to be proven, or where it has been proven. So that doesn't make any sense. Now, Nithya Raman, the Democratic Socialist, which I don't know whether she's better than the incompetent communist Karen Bass. It's pretty sad if we're in LA and we're debating whether they get a communist or a Democratic Socialist. She didn't have much name recognition. I got a ton of friends from Southern California, and they really didn't even know who she was. She didn't win her own district. You know the place, because she's a sitting city councilwoman, and you would think people would know her in her district And if they liked her, they would do something crazy like vote for her. But even with all of these mail-in ballots that are coming in later, she's still not winning her own district. That's a huge problem. So, I don't know. I don't know what happens there, but probably Spencer Pratt is out. Part of why this is so concerning is because this also potentially affects every other race. The next big one that it might affect is it's not 100% clear that Steve Hilton is going to be in the runoff. It might be the incompetent Javier Becerra who wants an assembly line to get rid of the problem of children, in the New York Times has written about this, so you can get a hardcore leftist opinion of how incompetent Javier Becerra is. You potentially might have Tom Steyer in there, a man who's kept all his wealth while advocating basically communist, globalist, global warming positions, but he still managed to magically keep his wealth. But don't worry, he's a man for the little guy. Or you got Steve Hilton, who at least has a good plan. I don't know that Steve is going to win. The reason I want him to go through is part of it is I think is just justice. In other words, I think he earned it. But part of the reason I want Steve to go through is because now we have 5 months of somebody in the governor position, fighting for the governor position, advocating for what I consider to be reason. Meaning, common sense. Not, oh yeah, like Nitya Raman wanted to get rid of barbecues in LA. Or every one of the governor candidates that was in the debates, all of the Democratic ones, every single one of them wanted to continue to keep paying, meaning your money, for health care for illegals. Now that's just crazy. I got to pay for my health care. I pay more than $1,000 a month. I'm not thrilled with it, but I know when I'm single, I don't even have family. I pay over $1,000 a month.
Wow.
I'm thin. I'm not on any medications, and yet I still pay more than $1,000 a month. It does include dental, but yikes. And every governor candidate, so Steyer and Becerra, they want you to pay. So I want somebody that's reasonable that says, wait a minute, you're not a taxpayer. You're a leech off the government.
Wow.
I want that to be ended. Or both Steyer and Becerra want to keep importing oil while they say that we have clean energy, because California burns somewhere around 12 million barrels of oil a day, and we get most of it from the Middle East. We don't pump it here, even though we have it here, where we could have good jobs, where we wouldn't have the transport costs, where we have better environmental regulations. So the pollution's happening in the Middle Eastern countries. Then the oil tankers are notorious for leaking. So it pollutes, plus it requires all of the oil to be burned to transport across the world, or we could just do it here. Well, Steve Hilton wants that. That's a common sense position. So I hope Steve makes it through, but we see what's happened to Spencer Pratt in LA. We'll see. Not positive that one's going to happen. Steve recently put something on social media that he's projected to make it through. Hope he's right. Keep in mind, the Democrats seem to always magically come up with more ballots.
Miracles. Yeah.
As I look at the number of ballots, and they say I'm going to do an imaginary number. Though I've seen this, I just didn't get the graphic for the show. They've processed, let's say, 60% of the ballots, and it's a certain number, and then they have a number that goes with that.
Yeah.
And then suddenly 2 days later, they've only processed 58% of the ballots, and there's an extra, let's say 400,000 ballots.
And they're underneath the table. They'll pull them out.
They're coming from somewhere,
Yeah.
and it's just not adding up.
Yeah, when the workers leave the building for lunch break, and all of a sudden they come back and there's more.
Look, California doesn't even have proprietary paper, watermarked paper that ballots go on. That's another really simple solution. But if I'm going to make it through this, I got to roll. I am happy to say there is basically no chance in lieutenant governor that ballots can keep coming in and they can cheat Gloria Romero from her chance to run for lieutenant governor against Fiona Ma, or maybe Fiona May. Forgive me on the pronunciation. She's a leftist, so I didn't bother to do my extra research. I just didn't think she was worth it. For Secretary of State, we've got somebody that I consider to be incompetent. I don't know if she's actually corrupt. Maybe she's just incompetent. The incumbent Democrat, Shirley Weber. And we've got a man named Don Wagner, who I believe can begin to fix what's happening with our voting system. Secretary of State, that is their primary job, to deal with elections. It's different than Secretary of State at the national level. For controller, again, almost an absolute guarantee we're going to see Malia Cohen go against Herb Morgan. Herb Morgan, or let me explain that first. Controller, largely what they do is they audit. They can audit anything they want in California government. So when we have a Gavin puppet and a Democratic puppet, well, then they don't find any fraud. Nick Shirley was able to find fraud in California, but our own controller couldn't find it. Herb Morgan created his own system for $12,000 to audit. It's already up and running. He's going to install this software to audit California, and he will use it in that way. And he wants to move his office next to the Attorney General so that if he finds fraud, all he has to do is walk across the hall and hand the fraud to the Attorney General. I want a guy like Herb Morgan in. Yep. So, good news there. For treasurer, we've got Eleni Kounasakis. It's a Greek, difficult last name. She was lieutenant governor. She jumped in to run for governor, then backed off. She's basically a socialist, comes from a rich family. It's interesting how many socialists seem to come from, well, they have champagne and caviar tastes. That doesn't quite make sense to me. Like, maybe they grew up and they feel guilty for the success their family had, so then they've got to try to tear everybody down because socialism doesn't work. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy. She's running against Jennifer Hawkes. So we got somebody potentially there. We have at least a shot. We will continue to have a conversation. For Attorney General, it is definitely going to be Rob Bonta or Michael Gates. Our current Attorney General, that's Rob Bonta. I don't know what to say. This is the man that said, there's no fraud, and then Nick Shirley found some fraud, and then he went, well, there's a little bit of fraud, and then magically, Rob Bonta's wife, who's in the California legislature, wrote the Nick Shirley Act so that private individuals couldn't go out and find fraud, and if they did, their content would be removed from the internet, and they might be fined $10,000, and they might have to go to jail. In other words, Rob Bonta's helping hand in hand with his wife to cover the corruption in California. Michael
Making
Gates.
it more easier for helping the corruption or enabling it than exposing it.
Yep. So I'm really excited about Michael Gates. Yuck. Insurance commissioner, my person, Stacey Korsgaden, doesn't look like, unless ballots come through in a way like they did for Nithya Raman down in L.A., in a way that doesn't make any sense. I think it's going to be 2 Democrats for insurance commissioner. And then my greatest point of hope, it's kind of strange to say this. It's not that I don't want all of these candidates that I mentioned, Hilton, Gloria Romero, etc. But Sonia Shaw got the most votes for superintendent of public instruction. Essentially the person who defends parents' rights, manages the school system in California, and Sonia Shaw is a warrior. Hope to have her on. Have met her a couple times, just haven't worked it out. she won. If she didn't win it outright, she's going to November, but she is so far ahead that the third place person has no shot. The second place person, who knows whether she'll get the chance to win. But we have to have candidates that make it through so we can continue to articulate our idea. Now, the middle's who we're trying to convince, hey, you need common sense. What do you got to lose? We've had one party rule. We got slick talking Lord Gavin. We've got a legislature that seems to care about criminals more than they care about people. So kind of the golden lining of all of this difficulty, this lack of transparency that has now come to light. Now, I knew about it, but I don't know that the average person realized it's 30 days to vote, 30 days to count. But the golden lining with that is common sense people are going to be like, wait, Brazil and India can decide in a day in their third world countries, but we can't. Wait, I have to show my ID. Matter of fact, my producer, he reminded me that you have to show your ID to get into Costco. And while that is significantly more important than voting, you would still think they would, throw them a bone and expect you to show an ID when you vote.
It's because of the free samples on Saturday.
Well, the free samples, that's why Costco's more important than voting, right?
I love the pot stickers there. Anyways.
So much for the diet when you go to Costco.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of great things there. I'm going to go by there right now.
Well, we're going to finish this last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So remember, there is a golden lining. We have to vote in larger numbers. It is, while I consider it to be profoundly wrong that vote harvesting can happen, it is legal. I technically took my mom's ballot to the polls. I technically took my dad's. Completely legal. Would have preferred that they'd both go in person, but they're both elderly. And so you can do the same thing. Do you have a neighbor? Do you have a friend? Hopefully you have at least one friend where you're concerned that they might not show up. I think the greatest tact is to say, look, if you'll go vote, I'll buy lunch. Let me drive you. Or if they like coffee, I'll buy coffee. Maybe both. Winning in California is possible, but you have to get off your butt. If you don't get off your butt, you're guaranteeing that the establishment is going to win. So if you want change, the change is in your hands. Folks, this is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist. Go out there, make a difference. Your freedom is worth it.